Well, I've now played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 for over 100 hours. I got it 3 days before it even released, and I have played no other game since I got it, so I have committed 100%. And you know what I think of it? I think it's a big game. I swear I have so much left to do. I haven't even got near the end of the story. There are side quest markers still all over the place. I got clouds covering half the map. It's colossal. It took me 50 hours to get to the dang wedding, but all jests aside, the game is incredible. The game sold 1 million copies on its release day and has gone from strength to strength. The first game wasn't polished, it was a little rough around the edges, but it was still a great experience. It was made in a short time with a limited budget, and as a result, a lot of gamers couldn't see past its shortcomings, and they put it down. Fans saw the magic, but it was a niche crowd. It still sold 8 million copies though. However, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 will be totally different. So many people are finding so much joy with this game, and many now proclaim it as the Game of the Year or even the greatest RPG of all time. Some loved the first game, almost everybody loves the second. But you know who must hate the game and its studio? Bethesda. Whenever a player like myself experiences a true RPG like this, we sort of create a chart in our heads on where to place it among the greatest RPGs ever. Think of your Witcher 3s or your Baldur's Gate 3s for example, but you know which game came to my memory? Skyrim. I've put 100 hours into Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and I've lived within that world. It is my home. I am so immersed in its world, its lore, and I generally feel like a kid again, hooked into a game that I can't put down. I remember that Skyrim made me feel like that in 2011. Starfield did not. Now what Warhorse have done here is what Larian Studios did before them and what CD Projekt Red did before them. They have raised the bar. They have changed what is to be expected or what is possible from a giant open world RPG game. And nobody will be looking at that more worried than Bethesda Game Studios. In this video, I will tell the story of how a giant in the gaming industry came in and dominated the RPG open world genre, how they became complacent, how they fell, and where they are today compared to games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. So without further ado, let's get into it. Quick side note, if you love videos on most things gaming, particularly games like the ones that I've just referenced, please consider subscribing. Okay, let's jump into it. So today, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 holds all the accolades and admiration in the gaming industry. But at one point, Skyrim was that game. The one game that every studio aspired to match. How did Bethesda manage to make such a great game back then? Well, to understand that, we gotta go back in time. So let's go back in time and cover Bethesda's track record, starting with their first game, The Elder Scrolls Arena. This game released in '94, and it sold 3,000 copies, so it wasn't exactly the game that made them. Daggerfall then released in '96, and it sold 120,000 copies. The game reviewed well and indicated that they were on the upward trajectory. Then, in 2002, Morrowind arrived. It sold 4 million copies and received stellar reviews. It captured the true open world of an RPG. Morrowind still has a strong fan base even today, and it is beloved for its deep lore, its unique world, and unparalleled player freedom. It didn't hold your hand, there are no quest markers, and exploration feels organic. It looks dated today, but best believe, this game was way ahead of its time. This game had such an emphasis on player freedom, and you could alter the game's world however you wanted. You could literally break the main quest. This game catapulted Bethesda up to another level. Oblivion would then release in 2006 and sell 9.5 million copies. Now, some would argue that it stripped away some of the things from the previous game, particularly in regards to player freedom and role-playing, but you cannot deny it was a more polished game. It looked better, it sounded better, and its user interface was more understandable. It was designed for a more casual player, whereas Morrowind required dedication. Either way, it scored well and sold better. Bethesda at this point were a well-known brand. After acquiring the Fallout franchise, Bethesda released Fallout 3 in 2008, and that one sold 12.4 million copies. It scored very well. Bethesda had shown that they could make great RPGs not just in the Elder Scrolls universe, but also in other worlds like Fallout, which used guns. Again, reviews are high and the sales are even higher than the last game. And of course, in 2011, we got Skyrim. This game sold 60 million copies and is considered as one of the greatest video games of all time. It was even more user-friendly than Fallout 3 and Oblivion. Graphics had improved, the game was of a grander scale, and this is when Bethesda reached their peak. Now, we all love Skyrim, but it's very important that I explain something here. The game is beautiful, the world's amazing, there's so much to do, and it's a masterpiece all around. However, remember these player freedom aspects that I mentioned in Morrowind? Well, at this point, they'd almost been stripped away completely. Each game up until this point had lost a little bit of that Morrowind RPG aspect, and it was replaced with more basic components to satisfy more types of gamers. Which is fine, by the way. I mean, Skyrim sold more than Morrowind, so I'm not arguing that it's the wrong approach, but keep an eye on this. And then, in 2015, they released Fallout 4, which sold 25 million copies, and it scored well again. Now, this game felt different. If you go to Metacritic, user reviews are around 70 out of 100, whereas critics give it around 90. The reason why the user scores are so different is because the game felt different. It was still a great game, but a lot of the RPG was missing in this RPG. The dialogue wheel was worse than the previous entries. Essential NPCs could not be harmed. We got Radiant quests, which are quests that are repeated and they never end. They're randomly generated by the computer. And we got them from people, including the infamous
"Another settlement has sent word that they need our help."
It felt less like an RPG and more like a looter shooter. Less about stats, more about having a quick trigger finger. Now, Call of Duty at this time was the #1 selling game in the world, so I get why they went this direction. Also, they added settlement building everywhere. So settlement building meant that you could build on top of land and across the map. And this wasn't just a side feature, it was a bulk of the game. Now, Minecraft at this time was hugely successful also, so again, I get why they did it. Now, I still love Fallout 4, okay? I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade. I still play it even today, and obviously it sold very well. But you can start to see a pattern where Bethesda are changing their identity from what they were good at and slowly shifting from niche RPGs to mass appeal type of games. Now, the 2015 Game of the Year awards come around, and Todd & Co were so sure that they would win Game of the Year with Fallout 4 that they actually released a Game of the Year edition of Fallout 4. But they didn't win. This went to a little unknown game called Witcher 3. CD Projekt Red to this point had released 2 Witcher games that had performed okay, but never blew the industry away. Witcher 3 had shocked the entire gaming world. It offered a huge map to explore, dialogue decision making which actually changed the game, side quests that were as detailed as main stories within other games, and a main plotline that actually brought you to tears. It was epic. I'm not going to wax lyrical about it here, I've done a video on it here in case you're interested, but let's just say Witcher 3 changed gaming forever. They had taken Bethesda's model but stepped it up a notch. Better writing, better side quests, better map, better story and better role playing. CDPR grabbed their prize and The Witcher 3 is considered one of gaming's greats. So at this point Bethesda have come up short, but they're still up there in terms of reputation. And then Bethesda went quiet. In 2018, we saw the release of Red Dead Redemption 2, which is almost another step up from The Witcher 3. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but in my opinion, Red Dead Redemption 2 is an underrated masterpiece. Rockstar don't normally go into what I consider classic RPG setups, but they did with this one. The story, the world, the activities that are in the game, the NPCs, daily schedules. I've done a whole video on that here, but the point is, Red Dead Redemption 2 was the next big one to drop and raise the standards. This is important, remember this for later. Okay, so 2019 comes along and Disco Elysium drops and it's revered by all. But unfortunately Bethesda came and knocked that game down with Fallout 76. Oh dear. Now, we all know about the rocky start it had, glitches, bugs, errors and issues. We all know the story of how they ripped off a lot of their fans and tried to scam them. If you don't know this, the video is here. But even if the game came out more polished, it was not what many fans wanted. Fallout 4 was more mass appeal than RPG. Fallout 76 was an online MMO with microtransactions. It could not have been more far removed from their previous model. It sold 1.4 million copies. Now that is a massive drop compared to Fallout 4's 25 million. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but an MMORPG is so far removed from an offline RPG. It went from a gaming setup where you explore the world, make decisions, do side quests, and build your character's stats up over time, whilst impacting the world and living through its story. Then, you're playing a game with your online mates, mowing down a horde of enemies with multicolour power armor suits you just got out of the microtransaction store. Now, you might love Fallout 76, but you can surely see why this didn't gel with the typical RPG fanbase. So, Bethesda disappeared for a while again, and then in 2023, Bethesda dropped Starfield. At this point, fans had now waited 13 years for a new Elder Scrolls game, but Bethesda decided instead to make a space RPG. It did not do well. Remember how I explained that Fallout 4 had removed a lot of the RPG elements from Morrowind? Well, it saw even more removed here. Player freedom? None. You did as you were instructed, and that's it. The quests were even more radiant now, or extremely fetch questy. The writing was more dull than Fallout 4. The worlds were literally procedurally generated, as in a computer made them up each time you landed on a planet. There was no handcrafted map. Skyrim had a giant handcrafted map and 198 unique dungeons to explore. Starfield had no handcrafted map, and around 12 dungeons that were constantly reused. So you would explore one planet and find X dungeon, go to a planet 7 galaxies away and you'd find X dungeon again. And there was no aliens, by the way. Enough has been said about Starfield's shortcomings, and by the way, you remember when I said that Red Dead Redemption 2 would come up later? Todd Howard based Starfield off of Red Dead Redemption 2. That is not a joke, and you can even Google it. If you've played both of these games, then you should be laughing out loud right now. That's how big the gap is in terms of quality. Speaking of today's game, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, some new players to the franchise are worried about even trying it. They worry that if they don't enjoy it, it would be £60 down the drain. Well, you don't need to pay the full £60 to enjoy the game, thanks to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Instant Gaming, and they save you money on video games. Due to the fact that they get their keys straight from the source, they're able to offer a better price. They have over 700,000 reviews on Trustpilot, and they have a 4.7 out of 5-star rating. They do exactly what they say. So just to give you an example, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is normally £60 or more, but here you can get it for just $47.09. Or the new Civilization game that's just come out. It's available for just $42.09 instead of the usual £60. This applies to almost every game and every console, and it saves you almost 50% discount on all titles. You buy a few games through Instant Gaming, and in the long term, it saves you a lot. That way you can have extra money to get other games. And it's super easy to use. You pick your game, your platform, make your purchase, and you get your code. Enter your code in on your preferred system and voila, there it is, ready to go. So if you want to save money on video games whilst also supporting the channel, click on the first link down in the description. And thank you to Instant Gaming for sponsoring today's video. Okay, let's get back to it. So, quick summary. Bethesda released true RPG games with player freedom, handcrafted maps. Over time, they transitioned to simplify their games to appeal to mass fans. They strip away many RPG elements in favour of new features. After Fallout 4, they go away for 8 years and come back with an MMO and a space game that their fanbase didn't really want. 8 years isn't a huge amount of time, but in video gaming, it's a lifetime. This industry moves at a pace like no other industry. I have seen thousands of videos about how gaming sucks nowadays, and spoiler alert, it doesn't, at least not technically. Games are getting better in terms of visuals, breadth of content, features. We almost get at least one certified banger each year. Bethesda had been overtaken in 2015, when Witcher 3 beat out Fallout 4. Nowadays, the gap has gotten even wider. Whilst Bethesda spent the last 9 years not making any offline Fallouts or Elder Scrolls games, we saw the release of Witcher 3, Divinity Original Sin 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Red Dead Redemption 2, Cyberpunk, and as of 2 weeks ago, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. The bar has been raised. And rather than sticking to what they do best and improving their formula over time, Bethesda went in another direction. Those 8 years have cost them everything. So Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has come out and it's blown people's minds, but I just want to tell a quick story of their history. In 2011, when Skyrim came out, Vavra co-founded Warhorse Studios and he wrote Kingdom Come Deliverance. He wanted to create a realistic, story-driven RPG set within medieval Europe, which is a stark contrast to the fantasy-heavy RPGs that dominated the market, Skyrim. Despite the uniqueness of the concept, he struggled to find funding. Publishers were skeptical about the project's marketability, especially since it didn't have any mythical creatures or magic. After failing to secure a publisher, Vavra and his team at Warhorse Studios turned to crowdfunding. They launched a Kickstarter campaign in January of 2014, asking for just £300,000 to prove that there was demand for this type of game. That campaign was a huge success, and they raised £1.1 million from over 35,000 backers. The early funding was critical in securing additional private investment, and it proved the concept's viability. The game went on to release in 2018, and although it was loved by many, including myself, it was not the world-renowned masterpiece that the sequel is today. Essentially, it was rough around the edges, it had some glitches, the UI and player tutorials were not the best, so it lost a lot of players. A lot of the features also had to be stripped. It had limited time and a limited budget, so in many ways this was a rough draft. The concept. Vavra had higher ambitions, but was unable to deliver on all of them as he had to get the game out. So the game still sold 8 million copies, and what did Warhorse do? They made the same game, but fulfilled their ambition. They improved everything wrong with the first. Better UI, better player tutorials, better writing, better quest design, more features, bigger map, more cutscenes. They just copied the exact same formula from the first game, but improved it in every way. I have a video on that here if you want more details, but essentially, this game shocked everyone. It is, in my opinion, a masterpiece. But what is integral is not just what they did, but what they didn't do. The combat was unique, but quite difficult. They kept it the same. Some features like alchemy were slow and methodical. They kept it the same. The first game made you eat and sleep. They kept it the same. In order to save, you had to get a specific item. They kept it the same. They refused to compromise on their vision to reach mass appeal. They could easily have done Ubisoft combat or added a difficulty mode, but then that wouldn't have been Kingdom Come Deliverance. Just like Elden Ring wouldn't have been Elden Ring. The Dark Souls series is another example of a studio making a formula, sticking to it, and then improving it with each release. From Demon Souls all the way to Elden Ring, the improvement is clear in each game. Just a quick side note for the comments, I know Dark Souls 2 wasn't a step up overall, but let's just give me a pass on this one today. Anyway, fast forward and here we are in 2025. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has dropped to critical acclaim and it's widely considered one of the greatest RPGs of all time. Decision making like Witcher 3, open world like Skyrim, and a live world full of NPCs just like Red Dead Redemption 2, and player freedom like Morrowind. Funny that that's the game it gets compared to, eh? This game is a certified history maker, and then we have GTA 6 coming out later this year, which will again raise the standards even higher. But what about The Elder Scrolls 6? Now if you're still watching, I think you can probably guess where I'm going with this. I think Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is The Elder Scrolls 6 that we want. It is the new giant open world RPG game that is up to today's standards. It is what we would want from a game like Elder Scrolls 6. If you prefer an open world with dungeons, then Elden Ring takes that spot. If you prefer role-playing as a custom-made character, then Dragon Age Veilguard, no I'm joking, then Baldur's Gate 3 takes that spot. I'm afraid to say that since Bethesda decided to move away from the RPG genre, I think they've forgotten how to make them. And even if they gave it in an attempt, they're miles behind. If you played Starfield today and then compared it to these games that I've mentioned and you rank them, where does Starfield come? Last place. By the time The Elder Scrolls 6 drops, if it ever does, it will immediately be compared to games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Baldur's Gate 3 and Elden Ring. My fear is that whilst Bethesda went off on a journey to try and make an online Fallout or Fallout in space, the gaming industry moved on. And when they do decide to finally drop, I think they will struggle to find a place left. Other games have come out and improved in ways that Bethesda games haven't. They can't compete. And the way they reacted to their fans about Starfield and the Fallout 76 criticism was a bad sign. When fans vented frustration about Starfield, Bethesda responded saying they were wrong and they weren't playing the game correctly. When 76 came out and fans said it was buggy and that their canvas bag wasn't actually a canvas bag, Bethesda said that they misunderstood them and there were no refunds. It was awful. Now look at Warhorse, how they treat their fans. They put on events and roleplay and let fans share in their joy for the history of Bohemia. Even CD Projekt Red spent tireless hours fixing Cyberpunk. Other studios not only make better games than Bethesda, but they also appreciate their fans more. I loved Bethesda games, and I'd love to be wrong. I would love to see The Elder Scrolls 6 come out and make me eat my words, but as I play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 without a single loading screen, I just don't see it happen. Another thing, when Bethesda decided to leave the formula set out by Morrowind and started to strip away more and more RPG elements in order to make the game more appealing for different players, I don't think they could have ever foreseen how popular RPGs would become. People love Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year. Witcher 3 won Game of the Year. People generally want these in-depth, complex RPGs. And despite the industry keep telling us that we don't and that we want it more basic and structured, that's just not the case. Dragon Age the Veilguard was more basic. That was a game that didn't really have an in-depth RPG aspect. It was more action-based. And it was rejected by the gaming worlds. But once a deep RPG drops, like Baldur's Gate 3, it wins Game of the Year. So they can continue to say that fans don't want these deep, complex RPG games, but the stats say otherwise. Bethesda went away from this. So whilst other studios stick to what they know and make their games better with each subsequent release, Bethesda spent too long trying to find mass appeal and a new fan base. They neglected their true fans, and now those same fans have found new homes and new places to spend their money, new games. And whenever that day does come, I cannot see them reclaiming their spot when they drop The Elder Scrolls 6. The gap is too far now, as showcased by the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2's quality. But it didn't have to be this way. This is no one's fault but Bethesda's, by choosing to go in another direction compared to studios like Warhorse. I think fans should consider Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as our Elder Scrolls 6 of now, because whenever that game does drop, I don't think it's going to be the Elder Scrolls 6 that we really would have wanted many years ago. And not only has Bethesda's game quality dropped compared to their competitors, but they've all but given up on trying to make an RPG. But anyway, if you're still watching, I just want to say, you're awesome. This is all from the heart and it was tough to get across, but sometimes you gotta give your opinion, which is what I want from you. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you think I'm completely wrong? Should I stop talking about Bethesda, since I can't even pronounce it correctly? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it the thumbs up, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm AvGaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great and what could make good games great as well. I'm going back to play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 now. Av out.